Hello, here we are, Teesside Rising. You know the score by now. I'm Bobby Benjamin. I'm talking a bunch of artists from across Teesside about their practices. Here I am, aptly with one of Teesside's rising talents, Bethany. Do you go by Beth? Bethan? What is your artist name?
Bethany, Beth or Bethany either.
Okay, so here we are, Bethany Hunton. Yeah, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your practice?
Yeah, well, I'm Beth. I was born and raised in Middlesbrough, so I'm a local person. I've lived in the Northeast all my life, and I'm primarily working sculpture and installation, and recently doing a bit of photography within my installations. But I work a lot with materials, and my work's surrounded by materials and the relationships with like local areas and sites and site-specific work. So yeah.
Yeah, that relationship with place, I think, is something that really came across in your most recent work. Can you tell us a little bit about your new piece, the one you've recently shared with the circular, the mirrors, or
Yeah.
is it sheet metal?
Yeah, it's basically they're aluminium discs that I created and cut out. They're reminiscent of there was a Zeppelin that crashed over Hartlepool and Seaton, and I was looking a lot into like the heritage of Hartlepool and Middlesbrough, and looking into like the different like aspects of history and the links between materials and the journeys they've been on. So like I thought the idea of the aluminium coming from obviously a different country over here and being shot down and left in Hartlepool was like quite a like impacting thing. So I did some research and found out that Zeppelins use a lot of circles in their designs. So the aluminium discs were set up in the sea between Hartlepool and Seaton, which is where the pieces were washed up, and they just like represent that material being transported onto like our local area and that big piece of history like being left there.
It's a really cool piece and a cool story as well. I had no idea that a Zeppelin had crashed in Hartlepool.
I know it's mad, isn't it? You don't realize until you like I did some research
Yeah,
and I was like, there's so much you don't know.
it's true. Um, and so I mean, obviously we've been locked down for a lot of the year, and your new stuff, you know, you're outside.
Yeah.
Is that something that came about from being locked down? Did you kind of want to, you know, get out
Yeah.
into nature?
Yeah, so it was basically I was doing a lot of like white cube gallery pieces, like site specific kind of to a corner space kind of thing. But then when lockdown hit, obviously like it impacted a lot of other artists. We went from being in studios and like having like the space to make larger things to being like at home where you might not have the space. So that's when I started making those paper installations around my like house, and I just started like using what materials I had around the house and like trying to make installations. And then that developed from being inside doing that to when we were allowed back out, that I was like, oh, I'm not going to go back into a gallery setting space. I want to work in public art, and I want to get out and be free to roam around my area and set up work that I think is like located in our history.
I think there's some interesting parallels between what you're doing and an artist like Anita Sewell,
Yeah.
who came out of the same school, the same the Northern School of Art too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting, and I can't wait to see what you do with it going forward. For anybody watching doesn't know, I've worked with Beth a few times. We've had you in Panel Black a couple of times.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully, we're going to be doing some more stuff going forward. Um, so can you just talk a little bit about, you know, what have you got going on? What's in the pipeline? What should we be looking out for going into 21?
Yeah, so I'm starting to work on a bigger project that instead of doing like loads of smaller interventions, I'm looking at trying to make like a journey of interventions so they all connect to each other. But it's showing the transportation of materials and things like that through our local areas. So it's going to be like a big series piece. So hopefully that'll be coming like within my major project at university. So that's going to be the next big step for us. And then as well, Lace Collective, which I'm a part of, we're also getting a show ready, hopefully to come next year, early next year. So that'll be hopefully a big thing for us as well.
Exciting stuff. I keep forgetting that you're only just going in. You're in your final year at uni, aren't you?
Yeah.
It seems like you've been kicking around for so long,
I know, it's
producing
mad,
content.
isn't it?
I always forget that you're still learning as well.
I know, it's
So
mad, isn't it?
so if people want to have a look at your work, if they don't know you, you know, should they go? You have an Instagram, right?
Yeah, my Instagram's Bethany Hunton FA, and Lace Collective is lace.collective, and that's where all my work goes and where everything gets posted. So that's where you'll find out new things if you want to.
I think we've had a couple of members of Lace on across these interviews, so that's got
Yeah.
plenty of plug. And yeah, do go and check out Lace Collective. And so just to bring things back around on the lockdown, because you know, the spirit of this documentary is kind of, you know, talking to artists who've, you know, during lockdown or now, as I guess we're kind of half coming out of lockdown. How have you found that whole experience? You know, I know you've talked already about kind of it giving you that drive to out, but how did you manage that as an artist? What was that like for you?
It was really difficult, to be honest, because it was kind of a shock when we went into lockdown, because we just had that short Pineapple Black with like the year at uni. So we'd gone from like being out in a gallery setting to we had to be shut in our homes. So it was really difficult at first, because it was just trying to adapt the practice, because you've got to kind of adapt your practice and change it to like what's going on at the minute. But as well, like I've been inside a lot because I've been shielding and things. So I've had to find a way to maintain my practice outside and like in a place with open air and free roam. So I think it's been really helpful as well, because I've found something that I really enjoy doing and something that has really brought me forward in my work, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, you touched on the paper installations you were doing around the house, and I just think it showed a really kind of instinctive way of working. And I'm the same kind of when I'm at home. My kind of practice shrinks and I fit into the kind of small spaces I have around the house to work in. And I think it's really useful to have kind of been able to work instinctively, because then when you are allowed back out, you know, the world's your oyster, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's been really good catching up with you. Thanks for coming and being with us. And yeah, everyone check out Bethany Hunton's work. Hit up her Instagram. She's a really interesting artist. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Bobby.
Goodbye.
Bye.